Hi guys, good evening. Tonight I'm going to present to you collaborative writing in L2 contexts, processes, outcomes, and future directions. My name is Elielson Mesquita, and I'm going to present to you this article by Naomi Storch. Okay, so let's start with the definition. Collaborative writing may be defined as the joint production or the co-authoring of a text by two or more writers. The joint ownership of the document produced in this action is the defining trait of collaborative writing. Collaborative writing is then distinguished from group planning or peer feedback activities that are often manifest as part of the process approach to writing instruction. Uh, so the problem here presented by the article is that despite the widespread use of collaborative writing in the real world and a number of studies documenting the advantages as well as the potential difficulties of the use of collaborative writing in the task uh, of the use of collaborative writing tasks in the L2 classrooms to date seem relatively limited. Although in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, there was a growth in the use of pair and small group work in the language classroom informed by interaction hypotheses of Long and communicative approaches to L2 instruction. Most of these peer interaction activities employed oral tasks, like information gap tasks, rather than writing tasks. There were numerous studies based on the interaction hypothesis have shown that when learners work in small groups and more commonly in pairs, they engage in negotiating of meaning with the goal of making their output more comprehensible and more target-like. These negotiations are said to facilitate L2 learning. Ortega noted that although researchers informed by cognitive interactionist theories of second language acquisition, SLA, have focused mainly on oral interaction, the type of interaction may occur in other modalities too, such as writing. Swain argued that the need to produce output is more likely to encourage learners to process language more deeply. They notice gaps in their interlanguage and they reflect on language use. Although Swain referred specifically to both oral and written output, writing may in fact provide greater opportunities for testing hypotheses, receiving and noticing feedback, and focusing on accuracy. Weisberg suggested that tasks that integrate speaking and writing, as is the case of collaborative writing tasks, may be more conducive to language learning than solitary writing. As Weisberg pointed out, collaborative writing provides learners with a multitude of roles not available during solitary writing. That is, the role of tutors, co-authors, sounding boards, and critical readers. Swain wrote subsequent articles in which she expanded on the advantages of collaborative writing, and specifically in her writing on collaborative dialogue and languaging. So these are two very important terms, right? So collaborative dialogue is defined as the talk that emerges when learners engage in a problem-solving activity. And languaging is the process of using language in an attempt to make meaning, to create meaning. That is, it is a means, it is a way through which thinking is articulated and thus brought into existence. So when engaged in writing, learners deliberate about how to best express their intended meaning. Okay, so you do that also when you are composing individually. When you're thinking to yourself, languaging is usually subvocal, that's thinking, which is speech directed to yourself, right? So the benefit of collaborative writing is that it encourages other people directed vocalized speech. So you say what you think out loud. The Swain draws most of her work from Vygotsky's socio-cultural theory. And the underlying premise of this theory is that all learning is fundamentally a social process. This process is the result of interaction among humans in a social environment, right? So Vygotsky's work focused mainly on children's cognitive development, particularly the development of higher order cognitive functions such as voluntary attention and intentional memory. Furthermore, the interaction was generally conceived as between an adult and a child. The adult, called the expert, provides carefully attuned assistance. This assistance is called scaffolding to the child, who is the novice. So, however, in the field of second language acquisition, a number of researchers have subsequently shown that scaffolding can also be provided by peers or in pair or group work, where the role of the expert is fluid. Okay, so not only an adult or a real expert can fulfill this role of expert. This role can also be shared by learners pooling their expertise in a process referred to as collective scaffolding. In this sense, meaning is jointly constructed, and the jointly constructed performance can outstrip individual competence. So together they are stronger, right? So while collaborative writing seems well supported theoretically, the number of empirical studies have investigated collaborative writing in L2 classes is relatively small. It's weird, right? So there are basically three strands that can be distinguished in this body of research. The first one focuses on the nature of the cognitive processes. The second one looks more closely to the outcome of the collaborative writing task. And the third one considered collaborative writing in computer-mediated communication context, right? So the first one is the cognitive processes. So since collaborative writing is said to encourage learners to language, that is, to reflect on their own use and their peers' use of language, a number of researchers have examined the nature of languaging that occurs during such activities and the factors that may impact on it. The two factors that have received the most research attention are task type and L2 proficiency groups. Languaging in these studies has been operationalized as language-related episodes. This is a very important term, LREs. So these episodes are segments in the learner's dialogue where they deliberate about language. It can be grammatical form, lexical choices, mechanics, and so forth, while trying to complete the task, right? They can also talk about lexical choices and all kinds of stuff. Clearly, the L2 proficiency of learners may affect the quantity and the quality of the LREs. That's what is firstly thought, right? So researchers found that learners who collaborate produced more LREs than other partners of interaction, thus suggesting that it is the pattern of interaction that may be more important than the relative L2 proficiency of the interlocutors. So might be that the way in which people interact is more important than proficiency itself. So in Odosari's doctoral research, it was found that task type affected the type of LREs with more meaning-focused tasks like jigsaws and compositions. eliciting more attention to vocabulary, to lexis, whereas the editing task generated more grammar LREs. However, in terms of number of LREs, the main determinant was the relationship the pairs formed rather than the proficiency, grouping, or type of task. Learners who formed collaborative pairs generated more LREs than those who formed asymmetrical patterns of interaction. Furthermore, collaboration tended to occur mainly among similar proficiency pairs rather than the mixed proficiency pairs, where the more proficient learner tended to dominate the interaction. The second strand of research is focus on the outcomes, right? So the data of these studies, that is the LREs of these studies reviewed in this section of the article, show that when collaborating on a writing task, the learners deliberate about language choices. They articulate their uncertainties. They provide suggestions, they provide counter suggestions, and they give explanations, and they give and receive feedback, right? So Swain and Lapkin claim that this is a very important thing. I was mesmerized by this part, that LREs represent language learning in progress. That's very interesting. At least one aspect of it, right? A number of researchers then have set out to verify this claim by investigating the outcomes of collaborative writing activities. Wigglesworth and Storch found that there were no statistically significant differences between the texts produced by pairs and by individuals in terms of fluency and or complexity. However, the texts produced by pairs were more accurate than the texts produced individually. Based on analysis of the pair talk, they attributed these findings to the focus on language use and to the availability of collective scaffolding and mutual feedback. The collaborative writing activities provided by the learners, right? So all these studies, they show that collaboration tends to result in more accurate tests, right? However, there is a more pertinent question at this point. That is, do collaborative writing activities and LREs generated by these activities, they lead to language learning? Okay, so according to Storch, it is not actually the language knowledge per se, but the depth of attention and engagement that may be important in collaborative writing tasks and subsequently for L2 development. But more research is clearly needed to provide evidence to support the claim that collaborative writing tasks result in L2 learning, and if so, whether they are equally beneficial for all linguistic features. So the third and final strand of research is online collaboration, which I particularly am very fond of. I am thinking of writing about this stuff. I actually have started already, and in the past 20 years, the field of computer-mediated interaction has greatly diversified in scope. So there are studies that describe the various forms of interaction that are facilitated by the latest features of computer technology, including blogs and wikis and social networks, for example, right? So these new developments, they provide opportunities for new types of interactions and new types of collaborative activities. There is a particular relevance in the use of wikis or the use of Google Docs, for example, right? This is a new form of collaborative writing activities that emerges from these tools. it refers to as a special type of website that allows users to contribute or edit within the site, and a record of everything that is made, all the contributions, is kept. Okay, so you can see whatever was changed in the text at all times. One of the major advantages of the wiki is that whereas group collaboration on a document in the past could only be achieved by individual asynchronous editing, which then necessitated coordinating the edits, that means one at a time, wikis allow all group members to have equal access to the most recent version of the document at all times. And geographical distance is not an issue here. Okay, you can do that from home. Thus, group members can build on another person's ideas. Unlike traditional face-to-face collaborative writing, wikis usually involve a group of writers rather than pairs, so more people can work on a body of text, right? And writing activities take place over a long term. So instead of 1 or 2 or 3 sessions, these things can take over months, like weeks, months, maybe a semester or years. You can see the case of Wikipedia, for example, right? There has been a growing awareness of the educational possibilities of the use of wikis in the classroom, right? So there are reports on their use. There are reports that their use has increased. In the field of general education, for example, there have been reports describing the use of wikis with young learners, university students, and teacher trainees, right? And wikis have a lot of potential, right? Here are some studies that can elucidate some of this potential. So Matthews et al. Show in their study that the learner's reflective diary suggested that the wikis contributed to the students' learning by encouraging them to read one another's contribution and synthesize the various sources of information. Both studies by Matthew et al. And Edward et al. Suggested that wikis collaborative activity may evoke new notions of authorship. So we are here testing the very fabric of society, right? There is also Wheelers et al. This study found that although students were happy to post their contributions to a wiki space for other people to read, they were a little bit resistant to having their contributions altered or deleted by other group members. People were a little bit jealous of their work. Everett et al. Shows that they report on this study that wikis seem to encourage posting contributions and some limited synthesis of information, but very little evaluation on what is being written. So, in this sense, let me get out of your way. Some studies suggest that the mode of communication may affect the attention to language in collaborative writing tasks. A study by Tan, Wigglesworth, and Storch found that whereas students tend to engage with one another's contributions when composing texts in face-to-face mode, in the computer-mediated mode, the style of interaction was cooperative. That is, in the computer-mediated mode, the learners contributed equally to the task completion, taking turns to propose a sentence, right? In conclusion, collaborative writing tasks may be conducive to language learning because they provide learners with opportunities not only to language practice, but also to language. It means reflect about their own use of language, reflect out loud about it. That is, collaborative writing avails learners with opportunities to deliberate about their own and their peers' language use, and they as they attempt to create meaning. All right. So these are the references for this presentation. Okay. So this is collaborative writing to context by Naomi Storch. Thank you for watching this presentation, and don't forget to answer the quiz on our virtual classroom. All right. Bye. I'll see you guys.